Hello friends, today I'd like to talk about The Evil Within because I finally finished the game and I've been aching to talk about The Evil Within, and I think I mentioned it in several other developer diaries. But I finally finished the game, so now I can talk about it. And I think the first thing that I'd like to say is that I think it probably could have been a good game, but I found the design sort of messy and not elegant, as I discussed in a previous developer diary. There's a lot of elements in Evil Within, but there's not a lot of focus, and I think that lack of focus hurt the game, but I'll get into that more a little bit later. So, The Evil Within is a long game. It took me, I think, 17 and a half hours, and my death count was like 70 or something like that. And I was using a walkthrough, so it's and I was playing on easy, so it's not like the easiest game or the quickest game, but it's weird because it almost feels like several different games glued into one super game. So the first part of the game seemed pretty interesting. I wasn't completely sold, but it seemed interesting, and there was a lot of, it seemed almost stealth based, and so I was expecting something more along the lines of like Amnesia or almost like a pure stealth game. A lot of it was like stealth kills and things like that. I don't know if you had a weapon or if I was just being cautious and saving ammo. I think you didn't have any guns, you just had like terrible melee weapons and bottles you could throw, well, I guess at the very beginning, and it's been so long since I played it, but at the very beginning I think it was almost just cinematic, and so I was kind of hooked and into it, and then I reached a point, I think it was in chapter 3, where I really felt like I hit a wall. There were a lot of enemies, and I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go, and the map was confusing me. It's like at night, and you have to like raise a bridge, and there's this unkillable chainsaw guy, and I got really frustrated. I almost quit at that point because I just kept dying, and I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do, and the enemies were really powerful, and the chainsaw guy, like, I didn't know if I tried killing him, but that didn't work, and so then at that point I decided I would use a walkthrough, and I think it was a good decision, but to some extent I obviously prefer to not use a walkthrough, but if a gameplay experience is going to be frustrating, then I do opt for a walkthrough, which is often like all the old survival horror, like the Silent Hill and Fatal Frame. I always use a walkthrough, and I still greatly enjoy the games, but I just again, even if I play on very easy, like, I'm always worried I'll miss, not have enough items to beat the game and not be able to get through it, and so it's interesting, though, because oftentimes I finish with a ton of items, and like, I was really trying to decide, at least in Evil Within, I was really trying to save all my items and ammo and stuff for this epic final boss fight that I thought would happen, and then like the final boss was totally just this one-off thing that really had nothing to do with the rest of the game, and didn't use any of the skills you've sort of built up until that point. And I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm somewhat guilty of this. If you go back to my career, at The Incredibles, we did this sort of little mini game where you have to like fire this thing at the Omnidroid. Oh man, I don't even remember what it's called, but and that was sort of a one-off thing. But, I mean, at least there was some conceivable combat in it, I think. It's been a while. But, like, yeah, a lot of times it's just, like, purely cinematic or just no chance to use your skills, which is frustrating. I think Yahtzee on the Zero Punctuation pointed this out about several games, but I think in general, from a developer standpoint, I think usually you do the final boss last, and you run out of time for the final boss, so that's why final bosses are usually lame, in my experience. Certainly that was the case with Rise of the Underminer, or no, not Rise of the Underminer, The Incredibles, the regular Incredibles. I didn't do the boss on Rise of the Underminer. Anyway, so Evil Within. So, anyway, and then after I got through that really rough point, I was really I got into this rhythm where I was really into the game, and it was, interesting. I was sort of, wanted to see what was happening, because they have this sort of psychological horror narrative, and there was a lot of things to keep you guessing, but I don't know if they just sort of wrapped up those, or they just stopped. I stopped being as interested because they didn't really give me enough nuggets, but at a certain point I lost my momentum, and then I still continued playing it, but at that point the game had almost morphed into something unrecognizable from what I had set out to play, and this is why I feel like it could use the focus, because there was there's a lot of gore in the game. It's very graphic, and often graphic in creative ways, but at a certain point in the game, it's just like always graphic, and you're just like, oh, whatever, this is just the game. It's going to be, really graphic, and you, at least for me, I sort of, I guess, became acclimated to that level of grossness or gore. I mean, not to say I don't think gore really bothers me very often, but I mean, sometimes it's kind of cool, kind of interesting, but it's sort of, in Evil Within, I sort of just got used to it, I guess. And the gameplay shifts to be more focused on these arena fights, and it sort of has a Resident Evil feel to them, but I certainly didn't enjoy it as much as Resident Evil 4, and certainly I think one of the things is that there's not a lot of ammo, and you can't buy ammo, and at least I felt like in Resident Evil 4, I didn't think that I was constantly in danger of losing ammo, but I was really paranoid about that in the Evil Within, because your maximums aren't particularly large, and that was like one of the main things I expended my green gel, which is your way to upgrade your character, is being able to hold more ammo, because if I can hold more ammo, then there's less of a chance that I'll pick up ammo, and I won't be able to pick up ammo, because that was my greatest fear. Which is really sad to say when you're playing a horror game that your greatest fear is you can't pick up ammo. That's not the best thing, but certainly that was what bothered me the most, and like at some point I'm like, oh my gosh, I have full shotgun ammo, and they're giving me more shotgun, why haven't I been using my shotgun, and and you can use explosive bolts, or there's some other bolts, but I never really used any of them. I found them largely useless, but the explosive bolts you can craft by picking up traps, and then, that's potentially an infinite source of ammo. So really the game became all about trying to conserve ammo and trying to manage your ammo and get through these action segments, which isn't compelling. I mean, I'm a horror game purist, but I'm not afraid to admit that I liked Resident Evil 5. Like, I don't think Resident Evil 5 was a horror game. I don't think it was the best action game, but I enjoyed it, especially co-op. I played through with my wife, and we both had a good time. So I'm not saying that, having action, if the Evil Within were an action game or had large action segments, I wouldn't really be complaining, but, I don't think the shooting mechanics, the feel of the game was geared towards action, and the you know, I was frustrated by the lack of ammunition, because certainly if you're going to be an action game, you don't want to punish the player for missing a shot, you know, horribly. And you know, also I don't know, I don't think I upgraded any of the accuracies of my weapons, which probably was a bad thing in hindsight. But I mean, it was like there were some sniper shots where you like had to kill them with the sniper, and it was super frustrating because I was just like, that's your aim. So anyway, there's a lot of complaints. But I think, you know, fundamentally there are good things in The Evil Within, and certainly if you're interested in studying horror or horror games as I am, I think it's perhaps worth a look. But I just feel like it didn't come together cohesively, you know, because there's all these different elements, and you know, the story didn't really come together in any sort of fulfilling way. And I'm not really sure exactly why it didn't. And I think part of the problem is, you know, I played it over a long period of time, so I almost forgot everything. But then you know, I certainly wasn't surprised or, you know, shocked, or there weren't any stunning new revelations after I picked it up. I think my longest gap was at the beginning of, or middle of chapter 12, I think, which is a very combat heavy level, and then I was just like, and then of course I put it down and played a bunch of other games, and then finally I'm like, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna beat The Evil Within. But the story, I don't know, it didn't quite hook me after the initial part. I mean, I think I got a feel for what was going on, and then, you know, you basically understand what's going on halfway through the game, and then basically there's nothing more it offers you from a narrative standpoint, so I don't know. I mean, certainly I think that could have, you know, if the narrative climax matched more with the climax of the game, I think that could have kept my interest, and certainly, you know, I wasn't, you know, the combat wasn't great, and there was a lot of combat, especially in the latter half of the game, so I think that sapped my enjoyment of it. But, I mean, I think they could have crafted a better game. I think, you know, if they would have tried to create something that wasn't 17 hours long, I think, or 17 and a half, I think they probably could have just distilled the best elements and, you know, gotten rid of some combat arenas and focused more on the scares. Because there's really, you know, not a lot of scary things that happen in the latter half, and I don't know, maybe I was desensitized, or certainly you could blame the walkthrough, but the latter half of the game seemed to play out like an action game to me, but not a great one. Anyway, if you played Evil Within and think I'm an idiot and totally wrong, or agree with me, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.